God bless y'all. You know, God will call you, confirm it, show you signs, and even then, some people, or should I say, it's possible to hesitate. Not because He wasn't clear, but because we don't always trust what He put into us. And sometimes the biggest battle is not the assignment, it's believing you're the one that He chose. In Exodus chapter 4, y'all, Moses isn't confused about the assignment. He's uncomfortable with it. He starts making excuses saying, "What if they don't believe me?" He tells God, "I'm not eloquent. I'm slow of speech and slow of tongue. Send somebody else." Now, that pattern, it shows up even now. Instead of resting in what God said, we start focusing on what we think is wrong with us. And when we focus on our flaws long enough, we start to talk ourselves out of what God already spoke. Moving along, y'all, God then answered Moses in a way that shifts everything. He says, "Who made man's mouth? Who makes the dumb, deaf, the seeing, or the blind? Have not I the Lord? Now go, and I will be with thy mouth and teach thee what thou shalt say." God wasn't asking Moses to be qualified, y'all. He was asking him to be willing. Now, God didn't deny Moses' weaknesses. He reminded him who created them. And sometimes we spend more time focusing on our limitations than trusting the one who formed us. And if we're not careful, we'll make our weakness louder than God's voice. Whew. Moving along, I said moving along. Moving along, y'all, Moses still doesn't want to go. It's not that he's chasing authority, it's that he lacks the courage in that moment. And there are times where it's not the ability that holds us back, it's fear. And fear will have you saying no to things you once prayed for. And some of us have done that. I've done that, you know? So back to Moses, God gets angry at him. Not because Moses asked questions, but because he kept making excuses after God already answered him. So God brings Aaron in. That's Moses' brother, which was a Levite who could speak really well. And even that carries meaning because Moses' name points to one God speaks to, while Aaron become the one who speaks to the people. And sometimes what gets added to our life isn't because God needed it, it's because we hesitated. And that brings a question we all got to consider sometimes. Are we ever disqualifying ourselves from something God has already decided we were chosen for? Are we? Because you can be chosen and still talk yourself out of walking in it. Come on now, y'all. Whether it be fear of what people gonna think or whatever. But moving along, y'all, Moses goes back to Jethro, which is his father-in-law, and he tells him that he has to go to Egypt. And Jethro tells him, "Go in peace." And that part is easy to miss. Moses had killed a man before, remember, and he fled and the people were looking for him. But God told Moses that all the men who sought his life were dead. They were all gone with Joseph's, yeah, what do you call that? Joseph generation, y'all. I had this perimenopause have me forgetting my name sometimes. But anywho, what Moses feared was no longer a threat, y'all. And sometimes we still running from things too that God already removed, living like it still has the power. But nothing has power over God. God has all the power. Anywho, Moses then he takes his wife and his sons and start heading back to Egypt. But on the way, something serious happens. God is about to kill Moses. You might ask yourself, why? I'm going to tell you why. He was about to kill Moses because Moses did not circumcise his son. He didn't. And this isn't random, y'all. Circumcision was a sign of the covenant, the evidence of obedience, the mark, the promise, the mark of the promise God made through Abraham. So Moses is carrying an assignment from God, but neglecting something God already established. And that's a warning for all of us. We can be moving forward publicly while being out of alignment privately. So then, with Moses, his wife, she takes a sharp stone. You know, she circumcises her son and throws the skin at Moses' feet and called him a bloody husband. It's very possible she was upset because of his obedience, which forced her into a painful, urgent situation involving blood just to save his life. And God let Moses live, though, because, you know, God is merciful and he still, not but he still requires alignment. He's a very merciful God. Then you see another layer because when God talks about striking Egypt, he speaks about their firstborn sons. And we all know in Egypt, the firstborn wasn't just important, they were considered sacred, tied to inheritance, identity, and even their gods. So God wasn't just bringing judgment, he was dismantling what they trusted in. God will always confront what we treat as untouchable. Come on now. Then God tells Aaron to go into the wilderness to meet Moses, and he does, and he kisses him. Moses tells Aaron everything God said and shows him the signs, and together they go to the elders and the children of Israel. And Aaron, he speaks everything Moses told him, and Moses performs the signs. Y'all remember, Moses had a slow tongue, slow speech, and all the people believed them. When they hear that God has seen their affliction, they bow their heads and they worship. They didn't worship Moses or Aaron, y'all. They worship God. It's easier to worship when you hear God is about to move, and it's harder when the process begins. But in chapter 5, everything shifts again. Ooh, child, I'm out of breath. Moses and Aaron, they go to see Pharaoh, y'all, and say, "Thus said the Lord of Israel, let my people go, that they may hold a feast unto me in the wilderness." And Pharaoh responds, "Who is the Lord, that I should obey his voice? I know not the Lord, neither will I let Israel go." And that same spirit still exists today, not always spoken, but shown through resistance. They explain further to Pharaoh, but Pharaoh accuses them of distracting the people and tells them to get back to work. All the servants, which was the Israelites, his slaves. And that same day, everything got harder for the Israelites, y'all. The people were no longer given straw to make bricks, but they're still expected to produce the same amount of bricks. Pharaoh calls them lazy and says their desire to serve God is just an excuse to not work. The enemy will always try to make obedience look like a problem. All the time. Now, since the workload increases, pressure rises. And now the people are scattered trying to find straw, y'all. And when they can't meet the demand, they're beaten. They couldn't meet that demand. They had to go get their own straw before they was given the straw to make the bricks. And then the people turned on Moses and Aaron because of that. Now, the very ones sent to help them became the ones that they blamed. And if we're not careful, pressure will have us blaming what God sent to help us. Come on now, y'all. So Moses goes back to God. He goes back to God, questions everything, asking why he was even sent when things only got worse and the people weren't delivered. And in chapter 6, y'all, God responds, not by explaining everything, but by reminding Moses who he is. Sorry, y'all. Ooh. God says, "I am Lord." Because before God changes your situation, he reestablishes who he is. He reminds Moses that he appeared to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as God Almighty, but now he is revealing himself as Jehovah. That means a deeper revelation, a fuller understanding of who he is. God remembers his covenant, hears the groaning of Israel, and lays out what he will do. "I will bring you out. I will rid you of bondage. I will redeem you. I will take you to me, and I will bring you into the land promised." Deliverance isn't just about getting out. It's about being brought into something greater. But even after hearing that, the people don't listen. They don't believe Moses and Aaron no more. Why, you may ask? Because they were broken in spirit and crushed by bondage. And sometimes, people aren't just rejecting the truth. They're just too wounded to receive it. Just too wounded. And even after all that, y'all, God tells Moses again to go speak to Pharaoh. And Moses, he responds with the same thing, saying, "If Israel didn't listen to me, how would Pharaoh listen?" And he says he has uncircumcised lips, meaning he still feels disqualified. He must have forgot he got Aaron with him. And, that shows that even when God is clear and consistent, insecurity, it can still linger in our heads, but our doubt doesn't cancel what God already said. And when we step back and look at Exodus 4 through 6, the pattern is clear. God calls, there's hesitation. God confirms, obedience happens, resistance increases, discouragement sets in, and then God reminds his people who he is. Because at some point, we have to stop explaining why we can't and start trusting what God already said and who he is. So the question becomes not whether God has spoken, but whether we trust him enough to move when he has.